In the Zen approach, we use the body scan prior to the actual sit. So before you actually start to pay attention to the body breathing, and this is not the formal teaching of the meditation. You know, when I was taught the Zen approach to meditation, they didn't say take some time before the sit to do this. I'm telling you that this is what works. And so because instead of coming from the pace that you're in, right? The pace that you're in, because the pace that we're all in is much faster than stillness, isn't it? Yeah. So instead of coming from the pace that you're in and sitting down immediately, you know, then it's like this immediate, huge change. And when that happens, a lot of times people say, oh, I can't deal with this, you know, because right away the thoughts and the racing thoughts, and I can't deal with this, and I can't stop thinking, and blah, blah, blah. So you're much better off. And because not only are you much better off, but you're actually making it easier for you to meditate by before you sit and do the actual practice of meditation, that you take some time and sit still and just be quiet and just be still and just give your body and your mind a chance to slow down by just being silent and being still. And then going from the top of your head down through the body. It doesn't have to be as long as they do it in Vipassana, but just looking to see where is tension. If you're looking correctly, there will be tension in the face. There will be tension in the eye sockets. There is tension in all people's eye sockets, and in the jaw, there'll be tension. Why? Because in the face, there's a lot of holding going on. There's a lot of holding going on, and there's a lot of contracted energy. There's a lot of condensed energy in the head, right? Because we live our lives through our face, don't we? Yeah, you live through your eyes, and you live through your mouth, and you live through your nose, and your brain is up here. So it's like the head's living a life. That's really the way it is, really. I mean, if you really look at the ordinary way that people are experiencing life, their head's living a life. The brain's living life. The thought process is living life, right? And it's all connected here to the eyes, the ears, the mouth, and so forth and so on. So there's definitely going to be tension here, right? So you come down and you just notice it. You just look and see. Just notice, just be aware of it, right? And then come down to the jaw, the neck, the shoulders. There will be tension here. There will be tension here. Why? Because most human beings are carrying their life on their shoulders, right? The responsibility of your life is on your shoulders, right? And so most people are going through life carrying a certain burden on their shoulders. And so you go through the whole body and come down to your feet. And this doesn't necessarily have to take long at all. The whole thing that I'm describing right now is maybe a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes tops. And then, once you do that, then you begin the sit by simply bringing attention to the awareness of the breath and the body breathing. So the emphasis in the Zen approach, the emphasis is on the experience of being the awareness of the body, the experience of being the awareness of life, the experience of being the awareness of thinking, the awareness of breathing, the awareness of emotions, right? So that you can start to experience the distinction that you are not the thinker of the thoughts. You're aware of the thoughts. You're not the feeling. You're not the feeler of the feelings. No, you're the awareness of this, because the whole process that we're involved with here is a process in which you're coming out of a misunderstanding. You're coming out of bad programming. You're coming out of ignorance. You're coming out of a misunderstanding about reality and about life and about yourself. And the implications of that leave you in a position where you keep behaving poorly, right? The implications of that leave you in a position where you keep behaving poorly and you keep generating unnecessary suffering. The implications of thinking that you're something you're not leaves you in a position where you behave poorly. Why? Because you're separate. I'm separate from the rest of you, right? And therefore, I have to be careful about my interactions and my dealings with you, right? Because given that I'm separate from you and I experiencing being threatened, my brain is a fear-based program, right? And it has a negative bias. So I'm already dealing, see, that's the thing. I'm already dealing with life and with other people in a paranoid state. You know, whether you are aware of it or not, it's the case, right? Because what's the word paranoia mean? It means that you're afraid of things that aren't really happening, right? You're afraid of things that aren't really happening. Well, the biggest thing that's not really happening is who you think you are. That's the biggest thing that's not happening, is who you think you are. So if you want to deal effectively with the fear that is inherently there from the programming and the conditioning, right, then you want to make contact with the truth. You want to make contact with who you really are, right, so that you can get out of this condition in which you continually, unwittingly create hardship and create difficulty and create suffering and create conflict in your relationships with people. This shows up, and I've said this, this shows up mostly, it shows up more than ever in relationship to the people that you're closest to. So they are your sounding board, they're your mirror, you know, that's where you can see who you're being, right? And if you're having conflict with the people that are closest to you, you're being the mistake. You're being who you think you are. You're being a person separate from the other person, right, who feels threatened by the behavior of the other person, right? And the way that shows up in your thought process is, oh, why are they doing this? You know, why aren't they the way they should be? Why aren't they the way I want them to be? Why aren't they the way that people should be? Why aren't they like me? You know? And so there's the inevitable conflict between people that come together and they have a separate, different perspective, a separate, different point of view, a separate thought process, a separate emotional process that comes from previous conditioning, right? And if you understand this, then you understand that, okay, you fell in love, if you fell in love, right? Usually you fall in love because that's what it takes for people to sign papers. So usually you fall in love, right? If you understand all this, then when the love starts to wear off, you understand, okay, the hormones are changing now, right? Now's when I have to understand that unless I am conscious and aware, and unless I can pay attention from a place that's real and true, I am now going to have conflict with this person that I was in love with. It's inevitable. You would think that people would catch on. Do you know what I mean? This plays over. How many times has this got to play over? Sometimes in one person's life it plays over 3, 4, 5 times, right? In terms of marriages and relationships and so forth. So how many times does this have to play over before anybody catches on, you know, to what's happening, right? It's interesting that the reason that people don't catch on to what's happening is because they're identified with the idea they have about who they are. They're identified with the idea they have about relationships. They're identified the ideas they have about love, and it's all bullshit. That's how country and Western songs get popular, right? If you listen to country and Western music, what is it about? It's about, I loved her, she broke my heart, right? That's what it's all about, right? And not even just country and Western music, but a lot of music is about that. And when people listen to, this is the thing you got to understand. If I say country and Western music, you can kind of laugh, like you realize that it's kind of stupid, right? No, but people believe that. That's reality for people. That's reality for people. You listen to these songs that people are singing, right? When they're singing the song, they mean that stuff that they're singing. And the people that listen to it, that buy the records, they mean that stuff too. Because it's real. And then the game becomes, because it's real and because they believe all the things that they hear in the lyrics of the songs, right? And all the stupid shit that people believe about love, right? Right? Because they believe all that, then that the whole reality about marriage, love, and relationships comes from ignorance. Comes from ignorance. Because it's coming from this basic mistake about who you are and about what reality is. So if you understand that, then you understand that if you want to have a relationship that works, you better get the work done on yourself. If you don't get the work done on yourself, you are not going to have a relationship that works. At best, you're going to cope with each other. At best, you're going to cope with each other. But you will not really love each other because you don't know what love really is, and you don't even understand your own mind and your own brain and your own self. So how can you be available to... Who's going to love anybody if you don't know who you are? Advertising plays on your fear. It plays on your sense of being incomplete. It plays on your sense of being inadequate. It plays on the idea that every problem has an answer. It plays on the idea that everything that's wrong can be fixed. And so it's just a matter of finding the answer, right? Just a matter of finding how to fix it. And then, of course, what advertising does is it brings technology into play. I was mentioning this the other day. Human beings are the most evolved reality on the planet, way beyond any other form of life, way beyond any form of life. Therefore, we have taken the brain power and the thought processes and used it to develop technology where we can expect to rid ourselves of anything inconvenient or uncomfortable immediately. That's the expectation, isn't it? Yeah, so even if it's antacids, right? Even if it's antacids, which one are you going to choose? The one that acts fast, right? The one that's going to stop the pain fast. That's the one you're going to choose, right? So the sales pitch is not just about this will solve your problem, but it'll solve it fast. It'll change it fast. And the problem with that is the source of addiction. The problem with that is the source of addiction. Because if it is the case that we're advanced enough that we can use chemicals that we can put into the body that change the body chemistry, change the brain chemistry, change the experience you're having, right? Then that quick answer becomes the answer that everybody's interested in having, right? And now you're addicted. And now you're addicted. Yeah. Now watch what she said. All this advertising about how you need to look, meaning that you're your body. Yeah. Right? You're your body. So that's something, if you don't get free from that misunderstanding before you get old, suffering gets much worse. Right? Gets much worse. Because you look in the mirror and you say, oh shit. There's not much I can do about this. Well, see, here's the key. Here's the key to not caring what other people think. If you get this, this can be something that can turn the lock to the key to the kingdom. If you get this, right? If you don't want to care what other people think, right? The first thing you have to do is not care what you think. Because what you think and what they think comes from the same toilet. It's true. I don't care what I think. If I cared what I think, I'd be crazy, because you have no idea what thoughts go through this mind. I don't care what I think. No, enlightened means that you know you're not your body. That doesn't mean you don't have one. That doesn't mean you don't take care of one. That doesn't mean doesn't make the one you got as presentable as you can until it doesn't work anymore, right? It's like your car, right? You know you're not your car, but that doesn't mean you just ignore it. No, if you don't give it maintenance and you don't take care of it, there's going to be a downside to it. So no, you could get up in the morning and know who you are and still, do what you do as far as makeup and all that stuff is concerned, right? But it's not something your experience of yourself in terms of well-being is associated with. It's not something that your well-being or your happiness is associated with. You can accept things as they are. That's the whole ball game. If you do these practices, and if you give time and energy to these understandings, you have to understand something. You're coming out of the position of being a physical body, and you're coming out of the position of being a separate self, a personality that doesn't even exist. You're coming out of that so that as your life continues, the possibility of experiencing life in a positive way starts to be expanded. Why? Because there's nothing about life that can have a negative impact on you because you've accepted the whole thing. People are living, society at large, people in general are living in denial. They deny death. That's obvious, right? I mean, if you can't see how obvious that is, right? It's total denial about death, right? And then they also deny reality. What do I mean by that? Well, in Buddhism, one of the first things that they present to you to pay attention to, right, is impermanence, right? Everything is changing all the time. Nothing is stable, right? So if you put your eggs in that basket, if you're trying to feel secure and comfortable when there's no stability and nothing's permanent, well, then you're trying to accomplish something that's not possible. It's sane. It is sane to feel insecure and fearful if you consider yourself to be part of what is unstable and impermanent. It's sane. That's sane, right? That's not crazy. That's sane. To feel afraid and insecure if you identify yourself with that which is impermanent, right? So impermanence is one of the first teachings in Buddhism. Why? Why? Because if you are connected to what's impermanent and unstable, and if you're seeking for that to provide you with happiness and well-being, you're going to suffer. That's suffering, what? Expecting things to be different than they are. Expecting things to be different than they are. Expecting that which is impermanent and unstable and constantly changing to be able to provide you with happiness and satisfaction. That's ridiculous, right? The good news is, see, most people don't get to the good part. Most people don't get to the good news. They think the bad news is all the news, right? Okay, so if that's all there is, if we're all going to die, if the bad news is all there is, right? If the bad news is all the news there is, if we're all going to die, and if we have no control over what happens with our bodies, and if we have no control over our emotions, if we have no control over our thoughts, and if we have no control over our behavior, right, then all the things that you see on TV start to become relevant, right? So we don't have any control, but how can we get a little control, right? We can't change the effect of time on our body, but we can get a nose job, right? So we'll sell you something. We can get some of this to change. You have some stability, right? Like that. So people don't take far enough. They're living in the condition that they think is all there is. And then in that condition, taking drugs makes sense. In that condition, doing what people do makes sense. In that condition where you know, now watch, in that condition where you really know behind the scenes, even though you deny it when you fall in love, that this relationship is going to become challenging eventually. You do know that. That's why you get a license. Because if they marry me, they can't leave, right? Or that's why, and this is truer than you would imagine. That's why people get sick and die. If I'm sick, they can't leave me, right? Or if I don't take contraception and I get myself pregnant, they won't leave. Right? This is the messes that people get themselves in life because they think the reality that they think is reality is all there is. Given that, this then becomes the game to play. How do you control what can't be controlled? Right? How do you control other people so that they behave in a way that doesn't upset you? How do you do it? Right? So, but what you can find out if you look into it and you understand that that's not the end of the story, right? It may even be the case that all that goes on like that to try and push you into the next phase of life, which is to wake up and realize, no, it was only a limited situation that you had to go through to be in the world of time and space to have you believe you're a physical body. That had to happen for this to go on, right? But it's not the end of it. It's not the end of it. It's actually set up for you to win. It's actually set up for you to realize that this situation is temporary and it's not real, and therefore death isn't real. It won't really end. You're not really a physical body. You're not really a personality. And you can experience this. It's not just some quick fix. It's not just some hypnotism. You're already hypnotized, right? It's coming out of this and realizing that you had to be in the mistaken version of things in order to get into the, you had to accept that the actors in the play weren't really actors, and you had to accept that the play wasn't just a play, it's real. You had to accept all that to get into it, right? To get into your movie, to get into the movie you're in, you had to accept that it's not just a movie, it's real. And you are your body, and you are your personality. Now you're in. You see, now you're in life. That's the way life is. Now you're in life. Now you're in time and space. Now you have the drama. Now you have a movie. Now you have a story, right? You're in, right? But unless the suffering that occurs there provokes you, pushes you to seek some other principle, some other reality, something that's beyond all this, right? Then you will be like most of humanity. You'll be born and live and die and never actually be here. You'll only experience the drama and the story that's going on in your head. So, if you hear about this and you understand what you're hearing, right? And you understand the possibility of it, and you understand that this can free you from suffering, that this can free you from death, that this can free you from the limited reality that is, unworkable, right? Then you can start to act on that and do these practices and study these teachings. The question then becomes whether you really get what you heard, whether you really understand the implications of this enough to deal with what you have to deal with in order to do the practices and maintain the process of learning. And that's where people fall down. Again and again and again, I talk to people who are suffering, and I say, okay, and these are people who have had contact with the truth or meditation or whatever, and I say to them, okay, do you practice the meditation every single day without fail for a certain period of time? Do you understand how this works? Do you understand what it can do for you in the future? And the answer is always the same. Well, I do it sometimes. How long do you do it? Well, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Depends. Depends on what? Well, it depends on whether or not I get too uncomfortable. Right? So you see, that person is not fully committed to the truth. And one of the things that I've said again and again, and trust me when I tell you this because I know it's the case, one of the things that you have to do to be able to do these practices and to be a student of these teachings and follow it to its conclusion, right? Follow it to its conclusion, which means you get to a place where you are free, is you have to have an unwavering, absolute commitment to it. Unwavering, absolute commitment to it. In other words, if you see this for what it is, if you see it for what it is, if you accept what you're seeing, if you hear the teachings and you see them for what they are and you know what this makes possible for you, then why wouldn't you make 100% commitment to it? It can give you everything you really ever wanted. Why wouldn't you make 100% commitment to it, right? Well, the answer to that question is because you still have 1 foot in the personality, more than 1 foot in the personality, and the personality is still operating you a lot of the time. Still operating you. And that's why you need an absolute commitment, because an absolute commitment means I don't care what the personality, I don't care what the thoughts are in my head. I don't care what the feelings are. I don't care if I'm tired, right? None of that is going to stop me because I have an absolute commitment to the realization of this possibility that I have come in contact with. And not only that, but there are people who have fulfilled the realization. The evidence exists. There are people who have fulfilled the realization and can tell you that it does exist and it does work. So that's what you have to do now if you're serious, right? If you want to move from being curious, if you want to move from this being academic, if you want to move from this being just a good idea that you're interested in, no. If you want to move from there and you're really serious and you want to have this practice work for you, then you have to make an absolute commitment. You have to say that this is what they mean in the traditions when they say you're on the path. They mean you've made an absolute commitment to living the rest of your life with a commitment to these practices and these teachings because you understand what that makes possible. That's what being on the path is. If you have not yet recognized who you really are, you're not on the path. If you have recognized who you are, but you're sporadic and you're off and on and you really aren't doing this the way it needs to be done, you're not on the path, right? Once you're on the path, there's an absolute commitment. Absolute commitment. And then you don't have to get into conversations about, well, I have a meditation practice, but I missed one day. Oh, should I practice tomorrow? You know, I miss one day. If I miss tomorrow, that's not a big deal. And then you miss tomorrow, and then the next day, it's like, oh, I missed 2 days. And by the way, this really isn't delivering on what I really wanted it to do for me. Right? That's the mind, right? If when that happens and you have an absolute commitment, you just say, no problem, I'm going to meditate tomorrow morning. Do you understand? The commitment will see you through. It won't make the challenges to your practice become something that's real. You will do whatever it takes in order to. And this is the kind of thing also that has people go to these like 7-day or 10-day things, right? Because they have an absolute commitment and they're willing to put them in situations that they know will forward the action, put themselves in situations that they know will deepen the understanding, that they know will create more clarity, make it a little easier to do what needs to get done in order to be awake and alive. So you need to look. One of the things, especially for people like you guys in this position that you're in practicing meditation and coming to this class, you need to look and see if you can see where you're at in this. You know, honestly see where you're at in this. You know, if you tell me you mean it and you're really committed to this 100% and therefore you're practicing every single day, right? Then you're on the path. If not, you're not yet there yet on the path. And so you need to look and see, you're better off, see that's the thing, you're better off not doing this anymore and just going and have a beer. If you're not going to be committed to this, you're creating new suffering, aren't you? You're creating new suffering. So don't do that. If you can't get committed to this, right? If you can't get committed and you just don't feel you're ready, go have a beer. Well, do both until you don't need to do both. You know, but there are people that I work with that are practicing meditation, and I've said to clients of mine, go have a beer. You need a break, man. You know, you're going to crack. Sometimes that's important. Sometimes you have to give yourself a break, right? But in the context, now watch. But in the context of being 100% committed, that won't stop the process. Do you follow me? You could take a break. You could take 2 weeks off and not practice any meditation at all and not be afraid that you're not on the path because the 100% commitment is still there. So look and see where you're at. See what your commitment is to this. And if you're experiencing discomfort through anxiety or depression and you don't have a solid, consistent practice, hello? What can I say, right? Because it's the practice that makes the difference. The understandings motivate you to practice, but it's the practice that makes the difference. First formally, right? And once you get that solid, right, it'll naturally start to extend itself into the times when you need it. When you're getting ready to have the next fight. All right. See you guys later.